So I believe that the most dangerous people in school and work are not always the most talented or the most intelligent. They're not the ones working late or studying the hardest or leading the top teams. Instead, they're the ones who are the hardest to derail, the hardest to overwhelm, and the most resilient. In today's episode, I'm going to go over 10 characteristics of people who are all of these things, and I'm calling them dangerous. These are the characteristics and habits and skills of people who are steady and focused and hard to knock off course, which ultimately leads to more consistent success over time. Now, obviously, you're hearing me use the word dangerous, and by that, I don't mean cutthroat or aggressive. I mean reliable and stable and hard to overwhelm. These are all things that anyone who wants to meet their goals strives to be. Now, I'm going to work backwards from number 10 to 1. I've organized them not ranked by importance, but they're layered in a way where each one builds to something bigger. And as we go through this list, you may start to notice that underneath all of these 10 skills are essentially 4 foundational concepts. How we manage our attention, whether we finish what we start, keeping our word, and acting based on values instead of moods. And if we strengthen these 4 areas, we become very hard to overwhelm, whether we are a student or a working professional. And then also, as we go through this list, I don't want you to just nod along or zone in and out, because I honestly think this is a really important episode. If you want to take notes on it, I recommend you do so. If you want to slow me down or speed me up to improve your listening, feel free to do that as well. Remember, you can find all of the links I mentioned today in the show notes. That's at learnandworksmarter.com/podcast/115, because this is our 115th episode. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and share this with someone. You can find me over on Instagram at School Habits. And now I think we're ready to start. Hello, you are listening to the Learn and Work Smarter podcast, the podcast for students and professionals who want to learn and work smarter. I'm your host, executive function coach, and founder of schoolhabits.com, Katie Azevedo. As a reminder, everything I mention in today's episode will be linked in the show notes, including a link to the transcript, which you can also find at learnandworksmarter.com/podcast. All right, starting with number 10, the people who are the most dangerous in school and work get everything out of their heads. Now, we've talked a lot about this on the show, but our brains are made for thinking and creating and spontaneous thought, not for storing. People who are hard to overwhelm do not fall for this nonsense belief that they can just remember things, that they can remember their tasks and their to-do lists and their assignments and who they're supposed to call and what time they're supposed to be at the place and the name of the person and the email they were supposed to send. That is an absolute nonsense story, and the most dangerous people know it's nonsense. So they don't even negotiate with themselves anymore. They've given up wasting their time with that silly inner dialogue that sounds like, oh, I don't have to write that down, I'm just going to remember it. No more. They don't do that anymore. Instead, they have one trusted system where they keep track of these things. For students, it could be an assignment management system. It is not your learning management portal because you have no control over that. Working professionals, that could be your task management system. Even a simple to-do list at the very least, but we cannot manage what we cannot see. And so we have to pull these things out of our head and put them somewhere where we can say, okay, these are my things. This is what I have to do. This is what I already did. This is the status of that project. This is the status of this project. There's too many to-do list items on Monday, so I have to move some of them to Wednesday. If all of that's stored in our head, we won't be able to manage it, right? This is what task management looks like. If something matters, if a to-do list item matters, if a task matters, it has to live somewhere reliable, and that is not in our heads. The most dangerous people know this. If you have no idea where to get started with this, I have a podcast episode all about the basics of task management principles. That is episode 5. And if you're ready to set up a system, not just find a random tool and you want to move beyond principles and you're not just looking for like a notebook or an app, but if you want to set up your actual system, I have an awesome program for that. It's called the Assignment Management Power System. That is linked below, assignmentmanagementsystem.com as well. It's literally just $47. And you can get through it in a weekend and implement it by Monday. All right, number 9. The 9th skill or characteristic of someone who's dangerous is they know how to lock in. In today's world, attention is gold. That is the currency of success. What we pay attention to gets done. We literally can't produce anything without attention. We can't finish things without attention. And if we can't sustain our attention on tasks that matter, then we're going to be really, really easy to overwhelm, and we are not going to reach our goals. People who are hard to knock down can maintain focus and attention on what needs to get done until it's done. Now, of course, ADHD throws a monkey wrench into this, and under no circumstance would I ever say to someone with ADHD, oh, you just need to like focus more or focus harder. That's not how it works. That is like telling somebody who is literally deaf just to listen harder, right? Like that does not work. But if you have ADHD, that is not an excuse to say, well, then I can't pay attention. Because if you can't pay attention, the reality remains that success is going to be a lot harder to achieve. Plus, people with ADHD can pay attention. They pay attention to everything. So it's not an inability to pay attention. That's a myth right there. But again, attention is currency. That is our gold. So whether you have ADHD or not, sometimes it's a matter of engineering focus. Okay, so not just sitting down and demanding to yourself that you lock it in, especially if your biology and your neurochemistry is working against you, but saying, okay, it is hard for me to focus on this particular thing, so I need to do what I can do to engineer it. Maybe start paying attention to the time of day where you have the most energy and the most chances of having good concentration. Maybe you're going to use body doubling, which is a strategy I teach you in episode 55. Maybe you start working in short bursts instead of 4-hour sprints, which is what some people might like to do. I talk about work sprints in episode 80, or maybe that's actually what you need. Depending on the task that you need to do, maybe you use some kind of voice typing and movement combination. I do that all the time. I will walk and I will voice type whatever it is that I need to type because I do a lot of writing. And I find that I can focus more that way. Maybe it's about tweaking your environment, right? These strategies I just listed are not just for people with ADHD. They're for everybody in this current world who has the attention span of a goldfish. But the people who are the hardest to knock down and who achieve their goals more consistently and more long term than other people have the ability to say, this is the thing I'm working on and I'm going to get it done. Not multitask, not fall for the bright, shiny object syndrome, not abandon projects halfway through, but find a way to focus on or engineer focus for what needs to get done. All right, moving along to number 8, dangerous people create clarity through action and not the other way around. We often wait to feel ready before starting something that's new or challenging. And I want to say that that's a trap. It is a myth. I mean, it's amazing if you're about to start something new and challenging and you have total clarity on exactly how to do it, so you can just jump right in. But then I guess, we're not talking about something that's challenging, right? Because you know exactly how to do it. So what I'm talking about is for things that are new and challenging to us. If we don't know exactly how to do them, but we have to get them done, it's taking action first that makes people dangerous, because clarity is the byproduct of action. It is so important to just start messy, start nervously with that pit in your stomach, like we all know that feeling, right? That action, that very first step is going to reduce the anxiety and unveil the path as we move forward. And I'm giving you permission to start messy. I have a podcast episode number 64 about how to do hard things, and I deep dive into 7 strategies for how to handle these new and challenging tasks that we're often expected to do in school and work. Like I give you step-by-step strategies, but in truth, people who are hard to overwhelm are usually quick to take some kind of micro action way before they're ready to. And if it's the right action, then awesome, then you proceed in that direction. But if it's the wrong action, that's fine. That's data. And then we go in a different direction. But if we never start, we'll never know. You know what I mean? Like if we don't ever take that first step, then the project is going to own us. And then we most definitely won't be dangerous. So the strategy to use here can be reverse engineering. In summary that's kind of like a larger concept, but that's the concept of knowing what the end goal is and knowing what the deliverable is, whether that's a Great Gatsby essay or maybe a project proposal for a client, whatever it is. It's knowing what the end goal is and then being able to work backwards from there to arrive at what that first step should be. So it's basically project management, being able to break a large project down into micro steps and then backtracking or working backward from the end goal. And when we can, and that's a skill, you can learn how to do that. And when you can do that, or when you can just say like, heck, I'm just going to start, even though I don't know exactly what I'm doing, that is when you get the clarity to continue taking the next step and the next step and the next step until you've done the thing. And when you've done the thing that you said you were going to do, even if it was hard, even if it was new, then you've already won. All right, number 7, this one is underrated. Dangerous people communicate clearly and often. Unoverwhelmable people don't let their confusion fester. They don't sit in uncertainty. They don't avoid the hard conversations, and they definitely don't ghost people. If you're a student and you're confused about an assignment, you ask. If you're unclear about some deadline, you clarify it. If you need an extension, you request it before you're already late turning it in. Dangerous people do not sit in that silence and uncertainty, hoping if they ignore it, it goes away or, it doesn't exist at all. They're constantly looking for clarification or offering it if that's what the situation requires. And then let's take a sec to talk about email too, because this is where I see a lot of communication just hard stop. I don't know if it's like a new generation thing or I don't know, but email is a professional tool. And yes, for students too. If someone emails us, we respond. We don't go silent. We don't pretend the email doesn't exist just because it's hard. We don't let it sit there for 3 weeks just because it feels awkward. We respond within a reasonable time frame. We respond clearly and directly and professionally. And I'm definitely not saying that we need to reply to every single email the moment it arrives. Like, heck no, that's not my philosophy at all. I don't do that. Like, I do email on Fridays. If you email me on Monday, you're probably gonna have to wait till Friday. I talk about email management in episode 15, and you'll know from that I am not a fan of checking and replying to emails all the time. But a fast track to overwhelm is letting emails go unanswered for an extended period of time, knowing that in the back of your mind, there are these lurking unfinished tasks. And also, dangerous people know what they want, and they ask for it. They know what they need to say, and then they say it. They're not over-explaining, they're not under-communicating, and they don't wait until things are on fire before having the conversation or sending the email or picking up the phone. Now, at the core, this one's really about professionalism. It's about not making other people guess what's going on. When we communicate clearly and early, school and work become so much less stressful. All right, number 6. Dangerous people build in strategic margin. So unoverwhelmable people, obviously that's not a word, I'm making it up, but I feel like it really works here. Unoverwhelmable people do not schedule their lives at 100% capacity. To be honest, I am guilty of this because I'm like, oh, I can have 30 seconds here and I can do this 30-second micro task. I'm working on it, but I guess this makes me qualified to talk about this strategy. Unoverwhelmable people don't pack every single hour of every single day and then act surprised when one thing runs long and then everything else just goes off the rails, because I'm sure all of us know a full calendar is not a sign of success or importance. It is a sign of not necessarily knowing yet how to prioritize. People who are hard to overwhelm understand that most things take way longer than we think they do. We can hit traffic, assignments can be harder than we thought they'd be, meetings can run long, kids can get sick, technology can be unpredictable. Everybody knows that feeling of trying to log into Zoom like right before the meeting starts, and then that's the exact moment that our laptop needs to do an update, right? That's not bad luck. This is just how life works and we can plan for it. And dangerous people do. How? By building in buffer blocks. They leave white space in their week to catch the overflow. Stacking commitments back to back without any breathing room is a guaranteed way to get stressed out and overwhelmed. And then that sacrifices our ability to think critically and produce what we need to produce. So what's the strategy here? I've got 2. First, you've heard me say it before, admin blocks. This can be a great strategy for adding margin into our day or into our week if you don't need one every single day. Second, you can even build in a catch-up window the day after you have a really busy day. So let's say that you have a day where you have all of your classes and some after school meetings and practice and your part-time job, or you're professional and you have a day that is just like absolutely stacked back to back full of meetings. And you also still have like your work to do as well. Okay, well then you would look at your calendar. And on the day after that really busy day, you could add a catch-up window, because you have to give yourself somewhere to catch that overflow. This can be a really helpful strategy because when we operate at 100% capacity, we're not leaving ourselves any room for error. And then when we have no room for error, even a teeny tiny disruption feels like a massive crisis. And then we become overwhelmed and definitely not dangerous. Building in margin protects our energy and our focus. It protects our resilience. And so when something unexpected happens, which it will, because this is life, we don't panic because we'll just say, oh, I'll finish that thing in my overflow block, or I'll just take care of that thing in my admin block, right? This is a characteristic or a skill of someone who's hard to knock down. All right, number 5, we separate performance from identity. So dangerous people are resilient. And I want to be clear what I mean by resilience, because it's not just like toughness and, pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps or pretending that things don't bother us. Resilience is the ability to extract data without self-destructing. So what that means is that when something doesn't go well, maybe a bad grade, maybe we miss a deadline, maybe we had a rough meeting or said the wrong thing, or we got some feedback that was hard to hear, we don't immediately turn into some story about who we are as a person and what it means about our character. We don't say, well, I knew I was terrible at this. Like, I knew I wasn't cut out for this. I'm always messing things up. These stories and that narrative never serves us. Instead, we say, okay, well, what happened here? Like, what worked? What didn't? What do I need to change next time? And that is a completely different response. I'm like, womp, womp, I knew I was no good. When we collapse performance and identity into one singular thing, we make them mean the same thing, all of our setbacks end up feeling way bigger and more significant than they are, and we take it personally. We think that if the outcome is bad, then we must be bad. If the thing failed, then we must be a failure. But none of that's true. And when we do this, it becomes almost impossible to be resilient and to move forward because we're no longer focused on finding a solution to the problem. We're just focused on nurturing our feelings and trying to defend our worth. Dangerous people do not spiral into this emotional, chaos or abyss. Instead, we review what happened. We understand that results are feedback. They're data. That's it. Feedback. And feedback can be used to do something different the next time around. Does this mean that we don't feel disappointed and sad? Of course not. It also doesn't mean that we don't care. It doesn't mean that we're completely stoic and have no emotions. It just means that we don't let one poor performance define our identity. Because when our identity is stable, we view setbacks as just little course corrections, as opportunities to say like, whoop, I gotta go this way instead. Right? That's the kind of resilience that makes us hard to knock off course. All right, moving along to number 4, we regularly evaluate and upgrade our system. So dangerous people do not assume that just because something used to work, that it's going to work forever and always going forward. What worked for us in 9th grade is probably not going to function well in college. What worked in our first job is not going to work that great when we have more responsibility and more clients, maybe teams to manage, and also like life and more moving parts to like the personal side of our lives. As our lives scale, our systems have to scale too. And this is where I think a lot of people end up getting stuck and maybe just clinging to old methods because they feel familiar and maybe because they don't know what else to do. We say, well, this used to work for me and so it should work for me now. But again, that's not how things operate. If things are feeling more complicated than they should, if you are constantly behind and stressed and feeling like everybody else knows something that like only you don't know, that is data. And as I'm always saying on the show, we don't want to ignore the data. Dangerous people don't ignore the data. We pause and we ask ourselves, like, where am I bottlenecked? What feels more complicated than I want it to feel? Where are things falling apart? And this level of self-awareness is critical here because maybe it's our task management system that needs an upgrade. Maybe we need to incorporate some kind of weekly planning routine or a weekly review at the end of the week. Maybe our calendar is completely unrealistic because we've added more commitments, but we never adjusted the structure that is supposed to support those commitments. Dangerous people audit, we adjust, we refine. I've talked about this before. I have episodes on how to know if your systems are broken and why your study systems stop working as we level up. Those are 2 separate episodes. That's episode 12 and then episode 104. The 104 is why your study systems stopped working, basically. Again, those will be linked in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube or in the show notes if you're listening on an app. But when we get in the habit of evaluating what we're doing, honestly taking in the data and asking ourselves, where can I adjust? We become dangerous. And we do this all before everything falls apart around us. We do it before we're fully surrounded by fire, but maybe when we just first start seeing the sparks. Number 3, I like this one. Dangerous people finish what they start. I have 2 episodes where I go deep into task completion strategies and how to finish unfinished projects. That is episode 72 and 89. Again, 2 separate episodes. But a lot of these skills I'm talking about today are about establishing a reputation for being reliable and trustworthy. And part of that means we have to be the type of person who finishes what we start. And right out of the gate, let me say that not all things we start should be completed, right? Like sometimes our goals change, or the circumstances change, and it is the smartest move to just abandon ship. That happens all the time. A really simple and definitely silly example. Let's say you start knitting a dog sweater because you're planning to get a dog. And then you, for some reason, choose not to get a dog. Well, then maybe it's best not to finish the dog sweater, right? I probably could not have come up with a lamer example, but you know what I'm saying. But for this one here, I'm talking about finishing projects that we're supposed to finish or that we want to finish because they're attached to some larger goal, either that we have for ourselves or that's, part of our job. Because when we have a lot of open loops, or we start a lot of things and just leave them hanging in this open, unknown status, we get stressed out. And then our confidence tanks because we don't have any data that supports that we actually did anything. Think about it. Let's say you've got 5 projects, right? And you're constantly working a little bit on A, and a little bit on B, and a little on C, and a little on D, A, B, C, D, E. Oh, and a little on E. I had to figure out how far was 5. But you're never really going all in on any one of them. That means that after a whole bunch of time, maybe after several weeks, you may still end up with no complete projects. And that doesn't do much for our reputation with others or our reputation for ourselves. It doesn't do much for our confidence or our productivity. So the first step here is to know what's worth finishing, right? That is the skill right out of the gate. But from there, the next skill is saying, okay, I've got these 5 projects and I'm going to take one at a time and take it to the finish line. And then I'm going to move on to the next one and go to the finish line, and so on and so forth. And I'll bet that I have some listeners right now who are like, but that's not how my job works. Like, I have 15,000 assignments for all of my classes and I have to be working at them, simultaneously. I always have to be working on multiple projects at the same time. And I get it. Me too. So do I. But there can still be a strategy at play here. Instead of working on all 5 projects every single day and not making a lot of progress on any one of them, maybe we work on 1 project per day every week. So you make some non-trivial progress on all of your projects by the end of the week. Or maybe you alternate between 2 projects for 1 week. So for example, you work on project A every weekday from morning to lunch, and then every weekday after lunch, you switch to project B. Okay, well then after a week or so, you're going to be done with those projects, depending on the scale of your projects. And then that's 2 projects done. And then you would do that same thing with C and D. But when we can lock in our attention, which is a strategy I already covered, on a single thing and get it done, then not only are we improving our reputation and our productivity, but our confidence in ourselves that we can do the darn thing. Because multitasking might seem like productivity, but it's just this pseudo busyness and scattered focus, and it does nothing for reaching our goals. And it most definitely does not make us dangerous. All right, we're getting close to the end of the list. Number 2, we do what we say we're going to do. So this one's all about professionalism, and mark my words, it applies to students just as much as it applies to working professionals. Dangerous people keep their word. If we say we're going to send the email, we send the email. If we say we're going to turn the assignment in on time, we turn it in on time. If we commit to showing up to a meeting prepared, we show up to the meeting prepared. If anything changes, which it probably will because that's just how life works, we don't pretend that that change isn't happening. We don't go silent. We rely on another skill of dangerous people, which is to communicate early and clearly. And then hopefully we can renegotiate the terms of what we said we were going to do, but we don't do that in the 11th hour. There is a huge difference here between breaking a commitment and not letting the person know that the commitment won't be met, and consciously and intentionally adjusting that commitment with clear and early communication. Professionalism is not at all about being perfect and being the first in line. It's about being reliable. And that comes down to doing what you said you were going to do. And I'm going to add on to that, when you said you were going to do it. True professionalism is understanding that our word means something. And in some cases, it's the only thing that we have. And if we repeatedly say we're going to do things and we don't follow through on them, then we're bit by bit dismantling our credibility. And not just with our colleagues and our teachers and our peers and other people in our lives, but with ourselves. And every time we don't deliver what we say we're going to deliver, we start to trust ourselves less. And it becomes easier to dip out of a commitment the next time around. But every time we keep a promise to ourselves or to other people, we're building that ironclad self-trust, and we become non-negotiable. Because if we don't trust ourselves enough to do what we said we're going to do when we said we're going to do it, then every goal we ever set for ourselves is more of just like some fantasy hope. Every plan we create is more of a fantasy than a plan. And every deadline we set for ourselves feels negotiable and flexible in the worst way. In my opinion, dangerous people are not always the ones who are the most motivated. In fact, we're going to talk about that. They're not always the ones who are most inspired, or as I said at the top of this episode, they're not always the smartest or the first in line. They're the ones who are the most resilient and consistent. We do the thing because we said we would. And it's that level of internal and external professionalism that makes us so very hard to knock down. All right, and finally, my friends, we have made it to number 1 on this list. Remember, I said this list is not in order of importance, but it's more about skills that are layered on top of each other. And the final one is that we take action based on values and not on our feelings. In other words, dangerous people do not wait to feel motivated before they do what needs to get done. We'll not always feel like studying. We will not always feel like sending the email. We will not always feel like finishing the project or going to the meeting or doing the workout or having that hard conversation. But if there's anything I've said on the show more than anything else, it's that feelings are temporary. They fluctuate. They're unreliable. They come and they go. They change based on our sleep and our stress and our hormones, the weather, who texted us back, who didn't. And if we only ever take action when we feel inspired, none of us would ever get anything done. So my challenge to all of us is to ask, what kind of person are we trying to become? What do we value? What does the task that we don't want to do mean to the larger picture? For example, maybe we don't love calculus. Maybe it feels irrelevant, but the skill of doing hard things well, the skill of focusing on something that we don't want to focus on, and the skill of following through on what we said we're going to do when it's inconvenient and hard, that is the point of doing the calculus assignment. Dangerous people understand that not every task is about the task itself. Sometimes it's about the identity that we are trying to build. And when we take action based on those values instead of our fluctuating moods, we become reliable and resilient and consistent and unknockdownable. And that consistency is going to beat motivation every single time. Now, let me be clear. This doesn't mean that we're ignoring our feelings, that we're becoming these little stoic statues. It just means that we don't let our moods and our emotions dictate our decisions. Because if our feelings are in charge, our lives become reactive, and that is not what we're going for here. That is not how we become powerful. That is not how we become dangerous. We want to be in control of our decisions, regulated. But when our values are in charge, our lives become intentional. And isn't autonomy the entire point here? Now, if you zoom out all the way on this entire list, attention, completion, integrity, and resilience, all of it rests on this final skill, the ability to do what aligns with who we want to be, even when we don't feel like it. That's what makes us the most dangerous of all. All right, so let's bring this all the way home. Once more, I'm going to review the 10 list items. Here are the 10 characteristics and skills, I'd say, because these are all things that you can work on, of dangerous people. The ones who are steady, focused, and ultra hard to knock down. Number 10, they get everything out of their head and into one trusted system. Number 9, they know how to lock it in and engineer focus when they need it. Number 8, they create clarity through action and not the other way around. Number 7, they communicate clearly and often. Number 6, they build margin into their days on purpose. Number 5, they separate performance from identity. Number 4, they regularly evaluate and upgrade their systems as their lives scale. Number 3, they finish what they start. Number 2, they do what they said they were going to do when they said they were going to do it. And number 1, they take action based on their values and not on their feelings. And when you zoom all the way out on this list, almost everything comes back to those 4 foundations I mentioned at the top. How we manage attention, whether we finish what we start, keeping our word, and acting from our values instead of our mood. That's it. That's what makes someone dangerous. None of this stuff is mega flashy. None of it is a hack. I'm not a fan of hacks anyway. You probably know that. And none of this is unattainable or inaccessible. It's just a set of skills and habits that when we stack them on top of each other, make us really, really hard to knock down. And when we are unknockdownable, we can literally do anything. All right, my friends, if this episode hit home for you or you think it will resonate with someone else, please share it to spread the love. Thank you so much for your time. Keep showing up, keep doing the hard work, keep asking the hard questions, and never stop learning.